prosthetist for handspring. We'll be talking about utilization of pattern rec, patients initially contraindicated on myoelectric control and upper limb prosthesis.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you all for being here and for Dr. Peckin hosting this symposium. I'm excited to present this topic to you. This past year, the handspring clinical team has had the opportunity multiple times to fit patients with pattern recognition systems who initially did not qualify for myoelectric control for a variety of different reasons. And we'll be presenting today one case study related to that. Just standard disclosures, the patient presented in this case presentation is signed immediate consent, and that handspring has not received any financial incentives from any manufacturers represented in this presentation. Handspring is just a quick background, a nationwide clinical team of prosthetic specialists. This is my colleagues, and I couldn't have put this presentation together without their help. So today, when I'm going to be talking about myoelectric control, I'm specifically talking about conventional myoelectric control, referring to one or two site surface EMG. And the scope of this presentation, I'm really going to be focused on comparing and contrasting two-site myoelectric control to pattern recognition control. So we've heard a lot about these technologies over the course of the last day and a half. We know that for two-site control to function properly, you need antagonistic muscle groups, minimum threshold voltage, adequate signal separation, precise electrode placement, and good skin electrode contact. Conversely, for pattern recognition, you need detectable EMG signals, you need discernible muscle contractions, good skin contact, and as was mentioned previously, room on the residual limb for 97 different electrode positions. So this is a very simplified clinical decision tree regarding how you would decide what type of a prosthesis to provide to a patient. At some point during the evaluation process, you would do an EMG test on the patient. If that patient had 4 EMG signals, you would ultimately decide to either go to a switched style control for an external powered if you knew that you absolutely wanted to provide an external powered prosthesis, or you'd look at a body powered prosthesis, a passive prosthesis, or no prosthesis at all. If the patient has sufficient EMG control, then we can consider external power, and this is how things have been done for the past 40 to 50 years when I'm talking about myoelectric control. So it's very simplified. If you don't have good EMG signals, then we have a simplified prosthesis. If we have more, if we do have sufficient EMG signals, we can then have an EMG control type prosthesis. But I want to talk today about breaking down this barrier, because what we see typically is that when patients get classified in one category or the other as far as EMG control or no EMG control, typically for the rest of their clinical treatment, they are kept in that category of control, and it's rare that they get reevaluated to receive a different type of prosthesis. So I want to discuss how we can break down that barrier and transition from no EMG control to EMG control. So through this, I'll be showing a case study on our patient Kevin, who suffered a workplace trauma injury that resulted in a transradial level amputation. They attempted limb salvage initially, but that ended up failing, and ultimately he ended up with a fairly mangled left transradial amputation. His elbow was fused at about 20 degrees of flexion. He had full thickness skin grafts and a lot of adherent scar tissue. In addition, around his elbow joint, he did have HO. So when Kevin was initially evaluated in 2013, he did not present with any surface EMG signals, and so he was categorized that to meet his functional needs, a body power prosthesis would be best for him. So this was the prosthesis that he was provided in 2013. He was fit at this point as a transhumeral level. We used outside locking hinges and provided him with a voluntary closing terminal device. Ultimately, Kevin rejected this prosthesis due to weight and cosmetic issues, and it just didn't function for him the way that he'd like. So in 2014, he came back and we discussed further what his goals would be, and we decided to fit him as a transradial level with a somewhat banana-shaped prosthesis. We gave him activity-specific terminal devices, and he also did continue to use a harness with a voluntary closing terminal device. And this worked out really well for him, actually. And quite honestly, he does still use those prostheses for particular activities, and it works well as a tool for him. Now, in 2015, Kevin came back to us and said, hey, you know, I've got a grandson now, and I really want to be able to help out and take care of him. I want to be able to help change his diaper. I want to be able to make a bottle for him. And I'm really concerned about using this body-powered prosthesis around my grandson. Is there anything else you can do for me? Well, we knew that Kevin had very minimal, if any, EMG signals when we had initially evaluated him in 2013. So we reevaluated him in 2015, and you can see here, he's being asked to open the hand and close the hand, and you can see this is with the gains turned up very high on the electrodes. This was all that he was being able to get, and you see there's no real signal separation. And it didn't matter where we placed those electrodes on his residual one, that's what we got. So then we decided to test him with pattern recognition. You can see again here now. Now he's being asked to open and close, and you can see we're actually getting quite a good distribution of signals, and he was able to control 2 degrees of freedom using the co-op system, the wrist rotator, and the hand open and close. So Kevin was fit with a prototype prosthesis and given the opportunity to take that home. And these are a couple of videos here. You can see the functionality that he was able to gain. You can see very fine precision control. You can see an activity of daily living, taking care of doing his own laundry, and zipping up his jacket independently. But most importantly is this one here. Kevin's able to make a bottle for his grandson, and that was huge for him. It changed his life and his interaction with his grandson. Kevin lives by himself, and his grandson comes and visits every now and then. And you should have seen the change in just his overall physical appearance, just the joy that he had. And once again, here's a box and blocks test just showing the amount of control that he was able to attain using this prosthesis. This video was taken after about 30 days of in-home use. So very fine precision control, and it worked out well for him. And here's just a video showing the donning of the prosthesis. We ended up going with a custom silicone liner for him that we integrated all the electronics into, and he's able to don it and doff it very easily by himself. See that there. So, in conclusion, two-side EMG control has been the standard of care for 50 years with respect to surface EMG. It requires discrete, distinct signals. It works well when you have good signals, but it doesn't work well when you have weak signals or a signal crosstalk. We know that dissatisfaction with control is one of the leading causes for device rejection, and that dissatisfaction can come from the fact that the control is either too complex or the control is inconsistent. So talking again about alternatives to surface EMG, we know that there's switch control or nudge control. Those options do exist, but those do increase complexity and are not quite as intuitive. Body-powered prostheses should not just necessarily be the default consideration when two-side control doesn't work. There are alternative options such as nudge control and switch control, but now there is the option of being able to introduce pattern recognition. And pattern recognition has been shown to provide consistent control when used by patients for whom two-side control was contraindicated, as I just showed with this case presentation here. So I'd like to submit that initial prosthetic evaluation is really incomplete if you do not consider evaluating the patient for pattern recognition control. We should go through the same clinical process that we always do, but we need to add this as a component of that evaluation. And so based on our anecdotal experience showing that pattern recognition can provide functional control of external powered prostheses when traditional two-side control is contraindicated, further clinical investigation is warranted to empirically establish this claim. And if this claim then therefore is validated, it suggests that pattern recognition really should become established as a standard of care for EMG control, and that's something that I really want want to submit to all of you as researchers and clinicians. We need that evidence established so that the payer sources will be accepting of this technology, because as clearly demonstrated in this one case study, it really can change patients' lives and lead to significant improvement. But unfortunately, we do have to make sure that our payers are willing to make that investment to change the lives of our patients. Thank you very much for your time.
That's a great talk. If just to keep moving, again, we can save some questions for later. But the next and last talk